Hello and welcome. This reading might be for you if you are navigating a problem or discomfort and you would like to cut through any assumptions you're making to get to the root of what's going on. So we're going to do a 4-card spread. Card 1 and 2 will be in the top row, and that's going to be the assumption row. Card 1 is the assumption of the problem, and card 2 will be the assumption of the solution. Then the bottom row will be the reality of things. So the reality of the problem and the reality of the solution. So I often like to call these readings I like to call these reading clarity readings, because I found that the number one reason that divination has been so helpful in my life is it helps me get clarity. So kind of cut through the veils of confusion, the veils of assumption, and to get to the reality of things. And so that's the intention here. If you're ready for that, that is the intention of this reading. Okay, so card 1 and 2 came out, the assumption of the problem and the assumption of the solution. So your assumption row, card 1, the problem is 2 of cups, 2 of emotions, and card 2 is the page of voices, the page of swords. So page of swords is the assumption of the solution. So this is an interesting message already. We'll see what comes out for the bottom row. Oh, interesting. Okay, so the bottom, card 3 is the Knight of Emotions, the Knight of Cups. And card 4, please, for the viewer. Ooh, Ace of Voices, wow. That is powerful. Bottom of the deck is the Fool in reverse. Let's just see what's under that. Ooh, Awakening in reverse, the Hermit upright. Okay, give me a second as I arrange the cards to make sure you can see them well. Okay, wow. There's some really interesting messages coming through, interesting things for you to feel into in terms of discerning assumption to reality. Because you'll notice here in your assumption row, we have 2 of emotions, page of voices. So the emotion suit is the cup suit, voices suit is the sword suit. In the reality row, we have Knight of Emotions, Ace of Voices. And so there is the same suits are showing up, but just different cards. So again, we have Cups energy and we have Swords energy. And so I think that is really speaking to the fact that you're close in discerning the problem and solution and whatever needs to come back into balance in your life. So in other words, whatever problem or discomfort you're experiencing when it comes to the symptom, at the root, you're beginning to gain more of an understanding of what's going on. But there's some large and small distinctions we can maybe make in this reading to help you have even a greater understanding of what's happening, to help you go from assumption to reality. Now, before we get to that, I do want to say I just recorded another reading, and the intention was to get information about a problem. It was a totally different spread, though, with a different deck. And I think this might be like essentially a part 2 to that reading, because there's a lot of similarities showing up. The first thing that was very interesting to me is this hot pink hair that she has in the Ace of Voices and the Ace of Swords card, because there was some pink that was like showing up so strongly for me in those cards from the past reading, and I wasn't really sure what it meant. But I think there's a message here just helping us understand that this could be, again, a part 2, so more information about the same problem, essentially. And then here at the bottom of the deck, we have card 20, Awakening, which is the Judgment card. And that card showed up in a really strong position in that reading as well. And what I love about it showing up at the bottom of the deck in this reading, and it's in reverse, is it's telling me more that there is this integration of discernment energy. So bottom of the deck to me often means the underlying essence of everything that's going on, right? And so with it being the Awakening card, or in Standard Tarot, it's called the Judgment card, I think and with it being in reverse, what it's speaking to me about in reverse is this like internalized knowing, this internalized awakening, this integrated understanding of how not only to navigate this problem, but like as you're navigating this problem, the integrated understanding of how to just navigate your life better. I think there's also a meaning here of like detoxing any ways of navigating that are based on rules and not on your own discernment and inner knowing. So it's really, really powerful. I guess let's just continue with the bottom of the deck, because as I was setting up the cards so you could see them a little better, after the Hermit came out the Muse of Materials. And that was another wink to me that this reading was playing off of the prior reading, because at the bottom of the deck, under the first card, was the King of Pentacles. Actually, no, it wasn't. What was it? No, I think it was the King of Pentacles. It was a king of something, but now I was questioning myself. But no, I'm almost positive it was the King of Pentacles, but we didn't talk about it in that reading. I forgot to talk about it. But here it shows up, again, the Muse of Materials, which is the King of Pentacles. And I think there's something powerful here about you growing in maturity about how you're getting your needs met and understanding what the healthy masculine version of that is. So not the toxic masculine version of that, but the healthy masculine version, where we are setting ourselves up with our own energy and our own work, but then also with the connections and care that we allow into our lives to be protected and provided for in really healthy ways. And so it's just a really, really powerful energy in terms of the underlying energy that's holding you, that is asking to be baby step by baby step integrated. The Hermit card shows up here with, I believe, a message in honoring the healing work that you have been willing to do, and also a call to continue to do that. So instead of looking outside of yourself, really honoring the going inward essence. And the Fool in reverse at the bottom of the deck is speaking to me about a willingness to start fresh, but with the inner work. That's why I feel like it's showing up at the bottom of the deck, or excuse me, showing up in reverse at the bottom of the deck with awakening or judgment in reverse. It's speaking to me more, the reversals are speaking to me more of that inward experience. Fresh starts with your inward experience that eventually and inevitably and powerfully trickle outward. So it's really beautiful. If this is all resonating, let's get to the meat and potatoes in terms of hopefully helping you discern some differences between assumptions you're making and reality. And maybe before I get into the specifics, I just, with my clarity readings, I often like to speak out that there is excuse me, what am I trying to say? I was going to say assumption, but I was trying to say affirmation. There's an affirmation from a spiritual text called A Course in Miracles that has quite literally changed my life. And it is simply but powerfully, I'm willing to see this differently. And, you know, if you're interested in A Course in Miracles, or if you're interested in the first kind of instance, that affirmation literally changed my life. I do share A Course in Miracles content on this channel. So I'll link up a conversation I had with my husband where we were talking about, I think it was the intro to the course we were talking about, and I shared in that video more about this affirmation. But I bring that up because that essence and the experiences I've had as because I've been willing to practice willingness, have been so remarkable in my life. And they've really inspired this clarity reading spread that I do often on this channel and in my own life. And it's because I have come to realize that it's my assumptions that I'm doubling down on that really cause the problems in my life. It's the willingness that I am willing to practice that really open up entirely new positive experiences for me and sustainable, healthy, joyful living. And so put another way, and this comes directly from the Course, it's a quote that says, "Would you rather be right or happy?" And I think there is something to be said about how often we unconsciously double down because we want to be right, right? We want to be right because there's like in many different ways, there's like a sense of like false comfort in thinking that we're right. But, there's, in other words, when we have to acknowledge that the reality of something might be different than what we had decided about it, it can be very uncomfortable. And so I don't mean to like undermine that. At the same time, cutting through that fog has really been the only thing that has worked in my life in many different forms, but specifically with divination, when we can cut through that fog and really ask for like, I want to know the reality of the situation so that you're processing the reality and understanding the reality instead of staying in the realm of assumption. I have just found such power in that process. So with that said, let's take a breath. And if this is all resonating, let's look into the assumption of your situation and the reality. So in the position of the assumption of the problem is the Two of Cups. So it seems to be that you are making the assumption that there just isn't a good match for something. So like somebody else or something else isn't a good match, and this is why you are experiencing this problem, this discomfort that's showing up as the symptom. You're thinking under the symptom is that something is not a good match. However, the reality of the problem shows up as the Knight of Cups. And so the Knight of Cups, when positioned negatively, which it is in this spread because it's in the problem position, is telling me that there is something about your situation that outwardly looks good, but underneath it's of no substance. The foundation is not strong. Something is off. So oftentimes I read the Knight of Cups as charm without substance. And so there's like a deception energy that I'm getting from it. So I think it's not quite as simple as this person or this thing just isn't a good match to me. I think there's more deception going on. And that doesn't have to mean like the person is lying to you or cheating on you, or if it doesn't have to do with relationships, it doesn't have to mean like this institution or this person has my worst like doesn't have my good intentions in mind. It could be more subtle and unconscious than that. But there is some sort of like within the situation you're experiencing, there's some sort of unprocessed trauma that somebody, it could be you, it could be somebody else, it could be like an institution, but like underneath it all is trauma that needs to be processed. On the top it is somebody is trying to cover something up, either with like, look at me, I'm beautiful, look at me, I'm rich, look at me, I know what I'm doing sort of energy, but underneath it is a lot of toxicity trying to be covered up. So it's not just as simple as two healthy individuals or people or even things coming together and just not being the right match. It's a little, it feels a little trickier than that. And this does relate to the other reading that I mentioned, because within that reading, what came out was the importance of discerning dynamics within this situation. So even if your symptom doesn't have to do with relationship problems. So let's say you're having money problems or you're having health problems. There is, within that reading, what was said is the purpose of you going through it, this uncomfortable situation, this problem that you're having to navigate, is so that you can more and more understand the dynamics of things, because it's so important to understand dynamics in all regards of life, I think, to stay balanced or to continue to work towards more balance and more healthy, joyful living in a chronic way. But on top of that, I think, so this card is really giving me that essence, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, that there is dynamics at play here that are rooted in a foundation of toxicity. But there's a layer over that toxicity that something or someone is trying to cover it up with more suitable or charming behavior. But it really isn't as simple as just not a match. There is a bit more deception going on. And so let's take a breath. That's not necessarily fun to hear, but I do hope it provides some relief in helping you understand what you need to do to keep yourself supported and safe and moving in the direction that is important to you. When it comes to the solution column here, in the position of the assumption of the solution, we have the Page of Voices, or the Page of Swords. So to me, that's speaking about keeping a watchful eye. Those are the words that are coming to me. So I'm almost wondering if you intuitively understand there's something that does not have a healthy foundation. And so there's a part of you that's thinking, if I can just keep a watchful eye on this, I can. So it could be as like simplistic as, maybe this is a relationship problem and maybe you do feel like somebody is cheating on you. So you think, if I can just keep a watchful eye on that person. But it might be a bit more nuanced than that. It could be like, if I can just keep a watch, this person, this thing that isn't of the substance they claim to be, if I can just like keep them at bay, keep them from having an impact on other people that I care about, like I'm trying to handle all this sort of energy. I can handle all this sort of energy. That's what so like keeping a watchful eye, and I can handle all this. And the reality of the solution is much more clear cut, and that is the Ace of Swords. That's the sword of truth. So it's really about holding that sort of truth and cutting through the veil of delusion and dysfunction, instead of trying to hold it, instead of trying to solve it by keeping a watchful eye. It's a cutting through. It's not a cutting down, but it is a cutting through of the veil to reveal the truth. So again, let's just take a breath. Not necessarily easy to hear, but I am fine. I mean, let's go back for a moment to the bottom of the deck. Beneath this discomfort that you are navigating is such a beautiful energy of you coming into your own, of you settling into your being and integrating a version of yourself that trusts your own discernment, a version of yourself that is unwilling to stray from her own inner wisdom. And so there is such power here. And so finally, as I was saying all that, I felt called to grab the Wild and Sacred Feminine deck. And we'll finish up this reading with one final card with the intention of getting advice from Spirit about the situation. Advice for the viewer on the situation that they're navigating. Whatever area of life it shows up in, what advice do you have for them? Oh, wow. Our Lady of Guadalupe, unconditional love. And right as this comes out, I feel like what wants to be said is, this is unconditional love for yourself. I mean, going back to the Hermit card, this internalized new beginning, this internalized idea of discernment and inner wisdom. I'm getting the sense, and this is just so interesting that it's playing off of that other reading, because in that other reading, again, we talked about dynamics, and we even talked about the intersectionality of humans too, but of healing when it comes, so the example I gave is when it comes to like the narcissistic spectrum. On one end of toxicity, you have a narcissist, and on the other end, you have like a toxic empath, right? And those two types of people require different types of healing. Somebody at that end of the narcissism spectrum, for their healing, they really require being able to see other people's perspectives. At the other end, a toxic empath really, for their healing, really requires stepping into their own power and trusting their own perspective. And so with that being said, I am getting the sense that I'm talking more to people on this end of the spectrum, which is definitely where I landed and continue to have to work on, is my toxicity lies in toxic empathy. So with that being said, again, we're going to read about this card, but this is definitely speaking to me, this card of unconditional love for yourself. So because I think sometimes when people like us see unconditional love, we automatically try to turn it outward and think, oh, this person, that person. And we see like the hurt and the trauma and the wounds that are beneath people's poor behavior, right? And that's a great thing. I was going to say, and it's not a great thing when it keeps us stuck or keeps us in situations where we're being mistreated, right? And so what typically we have to do to heal is, instead of turning that externally, we need to turn it inward and turn that unconditional love towards ourselves. Meaning, and see this like bubble around her, that's really speaking to me about protection. Okay, let's read about Our Lady of Guadalupe. Shadow, unworthiness. A generous heart is always open, always ready to receive our going and coming. In the midst of such love, we need never fear abandonment. This is the most precious gift true love offers, the experience of knowing we always belong. Bell hooks. When you draw the Virgin Mary as Our Lady of Guadalupe, prepare to be held by the Blessed Mother. Oh, wow. In that tender embrace, who embraces whom? There is no past, no story, no unworthiness, no unworthiness. Just the experience of love itself arriving at your door, being greeted by love. Our Lady petitions you to welcome your own dear heart back. Oh my gosh. Wow. That is like really what, that just sums it up beautifully. Welcome your own dear heart back. Again, this is not about extending love outward. This is about turning that inward. Wow, that's so beautiful. Okay, onward. Where did we stop here? Okay, so I'll read that part one more time. Our Lady petitions you to welcome your own dear heart back. What if you never lack for love? Only defend yourself against it. When those walls come down, an unconditional love for all of creation, including your perfectly imperfect self, can arise. Love joins with everything. Nothing is excluded. Centuries ago, Our Lady of Guadalupe, a potent fusion of the Catholic Mother Mary with, I'm not sure how to say this, so please forgive my mispronunciation, Tunantzin, her Aztec mother goddess complement, appeared to an indigenous man on the holy hill where Tunantzin had been worshipped, which is in modern-day Mexico City. She requested that a temple be built on this site where she could offer solace to those who sought her help. No one is beyond the embrace of love, but believe yourself unworthy is to cut yourself off from the source, the radiant mystery that resides at the center of your being. Even today, well, isn't that interesting? So like, to believe yourself unworthy is to cut yourself off from the source, the radiant mystery that resides at the center of your being. So the bottom of the deck is really giving me that like center of your being essence, the settling into your being essence. And then here we have the Ace of Swords, which is like the cutting off. But so it says, but to believe yourself unworthy is to cut yourself off from the source, from this radiant mystery that resides within yourself. And so it's like the Ace of Swords is being called forth to cut different things off. So instead of cutting yourself off from your own inner knowing, it's cutting yourself from toxicity. So it's like using that sword's energy differently. And that, because again, in the assumption row, we have the assumption of the solution, which is swords cards. But in the reality of the solution, there's cutting the veil. So instead of cutting yourself off from your inner knowing, it's cutting what is not working, cutting the toxicity. Wow. It's just, these readings just like blow my mind sometimes, the synchronicities and the resonance, the coherence of the message. So thank you so much for tuning in. If I wasn't reading for you, I don't think the coherence would come through in this way. And I just find it so inspiring. So thanks for being you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll continue here. It says, even today, the Virgin of Guadalupe upholds the universal promise of motherly intercession. She is the nurturing force who hears your cries, dries your tears, and mends your broken heart. Let Our Lady stir in you the yearning for mother and the calling to come home to yourself. I just got goosebumps. This is just so beautiful. The message is so cohesive. Coming home to yourself. Yes, that's another way to put it. As all the great mothers did before her, the Blessed Mother embodies the bond between the whole of existence and every aspect of itself. When you struggle to dwell in this love, you can always ask her for her help. But remember, where judgment resides, the Holy Mother cannot abide. Under her starry watch, out beyond right and wrong, no prayer is refused. When you sense the presence of infinite love, you will know you have returned to the divine lamp from whence you came. Wow. Oh my gosh. And isn't that interesting? The judgment card, or judgment comes up, where judgment resides, love cannot abide. And that's a bit of the awakening card, once again, is the judgment card in the standard tarot. And so I think another message that it's saying, not only about, so the first message I got from it is that integration of your own inner wisdom. I think there's also something here about detoxing judgments that are rooted in toxicity. So those are the judgments of others, but I think they're also the judgments that you've internalized within yourself. And so with that being said, I just want to take a breath with you. If this is all resonating, what really feels like wants to come through is you're doing this healing journey right, not wrong. Whatever you're navigating is for a greater purpose. As I say that, I don't mean to undermine the discomfort of all that we have to navigate to get to more comfortable, balanced, joyful living. But I am definitely getting the sense that you are building in capacity to do the work that's required to achieve that. And that might not sound like a big thing, but I think that's what all of us are looking for, right? We think we're looking for easier circumstances, but I think what we're actually looking for is the capacity to meet life with integrity, to meet it more head on, not in a forceful way, but in a way where we can face what we need to face in order to process and understand what we need to process and understand, and to move forward in our life in powerful and uplifting and inspiring ways, versus staying stuck in vicious cycles. And that is the energy that is definitely coming through in this reading. So I just want to commend you. And once again, thank you so much for tuning in.